Generation X and Xennials in America really lucked out when it came to our childhood and adolescence. We didn't realize it at the time, but growing up in the 80s was absolutely peak era for the American childhood. And it wasn't just because of all the amazing music and movies, bold fashion, friendship bracelets, and gallons of hairspray. There were a lot of things that made growing up in the 80s the greatest thing ever. So great that it's impossible to explain it to those who weren't there. But I'm going to give it my best shot. Hi, I'm Natalie, and I'm a Gen Xer and a Xennial. This is my channel, and this video is about my list of things that made growing up in the 80s in America so damn special. Surprisingly, there's a lot of pizza involved. Now, before we start, I will admit that this list is from the perspective of a girl who was born in 1977 and grew up in a small rural Midwest town that had about 10,000 people in it. So there are a couple things in this video that are probably exclusive to that Xennial small town experience. However, I'm confident there are enough shared experiences on this list that will make most of my Gen X viewers feel all the nostalgic feels. I also know that I will in no way cover absolutely everything that made being a kid in the 80s so awesome. So, whatever it is that I forget or don't mention, please put it in the comments below. Okay, the first thing that was awesome about growing up in the 80s was school lunch pizza. School lunch in the 80s was a special time to show off your sweet lunchbox and chow down on some Lunchables and drink some Capri Sun. But on pizza day, trust and believe, we were going to be in that cafeteria line to grab our rectangle slice of pizza with a side of corn and a carton of milk. For anyone who wants to recreate this fantastic feast, I have a link to the recipe in the description below. Next up, American holidays, especially in a small town. From Christmas parades to Labor Day town picnics to 4th of July fireworks displays, American holidays in the 80s were always a time when communities, families, and friends would gather to celebrate and honor our traditions, founding principles, and all those who came before us. The small town I grew up in always had the downtown area decorated for every major holiday, and there were always festivals, parades, fairs, or some kind of local event where you could celebrate American traditions. I want to include homecoming in this holiday section as well. Even though it's not an official American holiday, homecoming was a big deal in many small American towns back in the 80s, and I loved going to the parades and football games and seeing who was crowned homecoming queen. Now, I get that we still have these today. We do. But I have moved back to my hometown recently, and the county fair and the Country Days Festival that we have and things just don't feel the same, and they're not the same as they were back in the 80s and 90s. It's just not the same. The next cool thing about being an 80s kid were scholastic book fairs. And Lord have mercy, what an event scholastic book fairs were back in the 80s. Oh, when those sweet, sweet flyers got delivered to your classroom with pages and pages of books, posters, magazines, puzzles, and so many trinkets that 80s kids could buy when that truck showed up at your school and the display appeared in your library or your gym or maybe throughout the hallways. Wherever it was located, it was the absolute best. The joy of getting a $20 bill in your backpack on book fair day, knowing you were going to get to go shopping and pick out whatever you wanted. Oh, today's kids just don't understand. Next up, weekly trips to the video store. Starting in the mid-80s, weekly visits to the local video store were a staple of the American childhood, and I'm not talking about Blockbuster. I'm talking about the local mom and pop video shop with VHS tapes lining the walls and overflowing from the shelves. I made it a goal to rent every Disney clamshell I could find as a kid, plus the big name movies like, Goonies, E.T., Ghostbusters, Ferris Bueller. Those were all rented over and over again too. But my absolute favorite growing up was the fairy tale theater stories starring Shelley Duvall. And I saw every one of those, playing each one of them on a loop during the days I had the tape rented. Picking out your own movie at the video store and taking it home to watch was a far superior experience compared to scrolling through a streaming site. I guess you just had to be there. The next great thing about being an 80s kid in America were McDonald's outdoor playgrounds. Gen X grew up in an era where kids were considered anti-fragile, so we could enjoy free play on our own and develop skills to navigate social situations, despite the risk of falling and getting hurt. Playgrounds were the place to do that. The ones with the metal slides that could give you the back of your legs first-degree burns, the teeter-totters and the merry-go-rounds that could throw you off at 20 miles an hour. The best place for the playground was the local park, but second best was McDonald's. That outdoor playland is iconic, and if you were lucky enough to have a birthday party there, oh, well, you were the most popular kid in class. Gen X was the generation raised by television, which was in a league of its own back in the 80s, so I'm going to be mentioning it a lot in this video. The first thing I want to say about TV that made being a kid so great in the 80s were the amazing TV theme songs. Not only could we sing along to the themes from the Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island and the Jeffersons when watching reruns, but we also had a few iconic themes to memorize that aired in network prime time.
Knight Rider, a shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
You take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life, the facts of life.
Here we are, face to face, a couple of silver spoons, hoping to find we're two of a kind, make it a go, making it grow together. We're gonna find our way. Every time I turn around, I see the girl who turns my world around, standing there. What would we do, baby, without her? Sha-la-la-la.
I know that this is something that's still done today, but road trips and family vacations to American parks and monuments and other fun destinations were so much better in the 80s when we didn't have phones, tablets, and the internet. Spending the time with family and visiting new places was always a blast, except when it wasn't. Still, many 80s kids look forward to taking these trips with their families every summer, and it was one of the best things about growing up as a Gen Xer. I've said many times on this channel that the world that Gen X grew up in no longer exists. And one of the reasons for that is the minimalist architecture and aesthetic that's been adopted in every element of modern design we see these days. Everything today seems to have like a gray prison vibe to it, with a dash of dystopian future often sprinkled in. We used to build and make pretty things here in America, and our cities and towns each had their own vibe and culture. But now everything feels so sterile and corporate. Anything that gets built, which doesn't seem to be much, looks like a concrete box, and everything else is falling apart and abandoned. It's kind of sad. No one under the age of 40 is funny. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I can't think of any young millennials or Gen Z comedians off the top of my head who would make me think, I want to watch their stand-up special. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. But anyways, I think Gen X grew up in the golden age of stand-up and sketch comedy, and that was a massive influence on us in a way that goes far beyond laughs and entertainment. I know personally that I had an album collection that included Steve Martin, Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy, and George Carlin, but there was so much more to comedy back then besides stand-up. You also had SCTV, Saturday Night Live, Monty Python, plus late-night stand-up specials on TV where you could discover someone new. Seriously, we had no business watching most of it as kids, but I think watching and listening to a lot of these boomer comedians shaped our generation just as much as the music we listened to. Another pizza entry on my list of things that made growing up in the 80s America so awesome, and this time it's about Showbiz Pizza Place and the Rockefeller explosion. It was Showbiz, not Chuck E. Cheese, that was the go-to pizza arcade for birthday parties in my world. And the first 45 I ever had was the birthday song from Rockefeller Explosion. If you're interested, there is a link in the description to a documentary about Showbiz Pizza and the Rockefeller explosion. It was made in 2008 and it's loaded with amazing images and 80s nostalgia, so I would recommend checking it out.
At Showbiz Pizza, you can act like a kid. You can have more fun than you ever did. You can giggle, you can wiggle, you can flip your legs. Showbiz Pizza, where a kid can be a kid.
There's a lot about the digital age with modern tech and HD and 4K everything that's pretty cool. But this Gen Xer feels like we've gone too far with the gadgets and screens. Combine that with an internet connection, and some people just can't handle it. And don't get me started on virtual reality and artificial intelligence. Which leads me to the next item on this list that made growing up in the 80s a far superior experience: vintage tech. Boomboxes, Walkman, VCRs, Atari, Apple IICs and Commodores, your own phone line in your bedroom. These were amazing things that made life in the 80s so much cooler in a lot of ways. But at the same time, this tech allowed for balance. You had actual people in real life that you could make mixtapes for or lay in your room and talk to for hours via your landline. You could still enjoy movies at home, record your favorite TV show, play a video game, and listen to music while having an actual life and your attention in the real world. I would trade my AirPods and Spotify subscription for a Walkman and a mixtape made by my best friend in a heartbeat. Back to the influence that TV had on Gen Xers, one of the things that made being a kid in the 80s so cool were the TV events, like miniseries or very special episodes. You also had TV specials like A Night of Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted, which eventually turned into weekly TV shows. These TV events were shared experiences for the audience and the culture, as tens of millions made an appointment to watch, everyone at the exact same time. 40 years later, people still vividly remember that scene from V, the scandal of lace, the romance of the Thornbirds, the epic stories of Lonesome Dove, Winds of War, and North and South. Growing up today, American kids have no idea what it's like to have a shared entertainment experience where everyone you know watched or witnessed the same thing at the same time, and then could talk about nothing else for the next week or so. It was glorious. The next awesome thing on my list about growing up in the 80s is Book It, the reading reward program from Pizza Hut that had kids devouring books by the dozen. The idea behind Book It was simple. We all remember it. You reward students with certificates, stickers, buttons, and that single topping personal pan pizza for reading books. And there was nothing better as an 80s kid than earning those certificates for your pizza and making your parents take you to Pizza Hut so you could redeem it and put it in your belly. Entire classrooms could also do Book It challenges together and earn free pizza for the class. They really knew how to encourage kids to read back in the 1980s. Pizza is on this list so much.
Y'all really want to know who done it?
Yeah!
Gonna have to read the book. Good point, Jamie. That's what the Book It program's all about. Getting students to read. And now that everyone has reached their reading goal, the pizza party is on.
This list is turning out to be all about shared experiences that we had growing up in the 1980s. So I had to mention going to see the Harlem Globetrotters and the Ice Capades back when they regularly toured. Going to these sporting events at a big arena was so much fun when I was a kid, and they created memories that last to this day. There was just so much more family-friendly and kid-friendly entertainment back when we were growing up in the 80s that you could experience live and in person at an affordable price. It just made for a fun experience when we were growing up. Okay, next up are 4 or 5 items on my list that I've merged into one big giant entry. So this is a big one when it comes to the best things about growing up in the 80s. Remember when I said earlier that Gen X was raised by television? Well, I'm about to prove it. First, we have the Children's Television Workshop on PBS. They gave us amazing shows like Sesame Street, 3-2-1 Contact, and Mr. Rogers. Then we had Saturday morning cartoons that had us glued to the TV for hours every weekend. There were also amazing live action shows like Pee-wee's Playhouse, Small Wonder, Out of This World, Today's Special, and the kids game show I'm Telling. Then you had Nickelodeon, which gave us Double Dare, You Can't Do That on Television, Hey Dude, and Don't Just Sit There. And finally, you had the ABC after school specials, kid and teen focused dramas that I would race home to see as soon as the bell rang at school. These programs were essential to the Gen X experience as they taught us about everything from shoplifting to dealing with alcoholic parents. I could literally create an entire YouTube channel about the influence that TV has had on Gen X when they grew up in the 80s and make numerous detailed videos about the topic. It's truly incredible how big of a deal TV was during the Gen X childhood. As big of a deal as TV was growing up for Generation X, the best thing about being a kid in 1980s America was the freedom. You got kicked out of the house in the morning and not allowed back in until the streetlights came on and the sun was going down. And what we did during those hours outside of the house was freely live like kings and queens, free from adult supervision. We rode our bikes for miles, drank out of the hose, flew down the slip and slide, raced on big wheels, hung out at the roller rink, went skateboarding in the park, played video games at the arcade, ate Pop Rocks and Fun Dip, and laughed with our friends for hours upon hours. It was the ultimate childhood, and we had no idea how good we had it. Okay, bye.